There's just something about fishing,
Beautiful.
right, Moshe? This is amazing. But to be fishing here in Israel, this is beautiful. For rainbow trout, no less.
This is just great.
Look at this guy fight.
Fishing in Israel with a tallow.
Yeah.
I had to come all the way to Israel to fish with a tallow.
Both of us had to.
Listen.
Yes. And you're a steelheader. You were telling me about fishing the Wilmot Creek and so on.
I have some fine memories of that creek.
Now, you know, we're not going to use that little net. I'm going to try to use my hemostats because this doesn't look like it's hooked too bad. And I'm going to see if this fish will fall off. So you do what you got to do, and I'll try to not fall in. You got a nice rock here. What a nice rainbow. He's probably going to thrash like crazy. Yeah, you have him just on the outside of the mouth, which is perfect. And I think he's going to be okay if I can get the hook out. Okay, one quick look. There's a nice rainbow from Daphne.
Beautiful.
And I'm going to shake it off. And there he goes, right down.
Beautiful.
Perfect. Now, you know, from my experiences, and I think yours too, spinners are one of the most versatile lures to use for trout.
Absolutely.
This one that you're using, the Vibrex, is one of my favorite. And I tell viewers, it's because it's a little bit different than the average spinner. It's got the little bell.
Yeah.
And it's got a gear in there that has, I don't know if I can, I can turn it with my hand. You can see the actual gear. The company claims that water goes inside the bell when you pull it, which I believe that. And when the water hits that gear, the bell oscillates. It actually goes back and forth. So besides the water hitting the gear spinning, it goes back and forth. That's why they call it a Vibrex.
Interesting.
Because they claim that in addition to the blade going around, rotating, you know, and causing vibrations and flash, that the water hitting the bell and the gear at the inside sends out a lot of vibrations. I don't know if that's true or not, but I know it works.
Definitely.
So in this size, for the size of trout that we're fishing for, a number 2 Vibrex is ideal. I find that the number 1 has such a small blade that a lot of times you have to snap your tip because the blade stops working, you know, because there isn't enough surface for the blade to catch the water. The number 3 they probably hit, but it's a little bit big. The number 3 spinner I use for fish that are more from 2 to, let's say, 5 or 7 pounds. But this is perfect. And a lot of anglers don't realize that it's very important how deep the spinner goes. You know, earlier we were watching the fish chasing the spinner. Yeah. And we could see them come right up to the shore because you were fishing it pretty slow. And here, because they're rainbows and they're trying to probably stay down where the water's a little cooler, that's why you got them to follow. If you were to burn the spinner along the surface, you probably wouldn't even get a hit. Exactly. Because, you know, it's not in front of them. So it's a really versatile lure. You know, if you're fishing for trout anywhere, whether it's here in Israel, in Daphne and fishing a pond like this, or maybe exploring some of the river stretches, or anywhere in the world, spinners are probably one of the best lures to use with an ultralight. You know, it's amazing if you think about it. I've traveled all the way from Canada to Israel, and I'm here in northern Israel, very close to the Lebanon border, and I'm actually trout fishing. And these are the type of streams that we're talking about. It's all the headwaters to the Dan and Jordan River. And the waters stay cold all summer long, because you know Israel has a very desert-like climate because it's the Middle East. But they also have the most springs and the largest springs in the Middle East. So to fish these streams, they're very grown in. You can actually see behind me, these are big fig trees, which I'm not used to. You know, and very tight, because hardly anybody fishes here, so there's no beaten trail. But if you fish enough of the pools, you locate the rainbows. Now, the gear that I've chosen for this trip is 4-piece spinning and fly rod outfits. And what I'm holding up here is probably one of the best lures to use when you're fishing for rainbows anywhere in the world, but especially here in Israel. And it's a small weighted spinner. And this spinner is kind of cute. It's part of the Blue Fox series, and you can see that the spinner body looks like a grasshopper. And it's even green. I'll tell you what, this spinner has produced a lot of rainbows for me. Now I've got that spinner on a short 5-foot-long spinning rod that's filled with 6-pound test clear line. But the nice thing about this rod is that it's 4-piece. So let me just show you here. There's the first piece, second piece, third piece, fourth piece. Very easy to pack away when you're going on trips. And it even comes in its own case. So I'm just going to assemble that back together. And even though it's in 4 pieces, believe it or not, it's a very strong fishing rod. So even if I were to hook a trout that's over 5 pounds, I'd have no problem landing it. Now, this area that I'm at right now, it's too thick to fly fish, but we have fish stretches that are much more open in reservoirs where you can fly fish. So this is an 8-weight fly rod, and it's loaded with a weighted forward floating fly line of the same weight. And the nice thing about this rod, even though it's 10 feet long, it's also a 4-piece. So I won't take the whole thing apart, but there's the 2 lower sections, and that's 2 sections for the top. So for those of you that like to fish, and you travel, whether it's for business travel or you're going for a recreational trip with your family, maybe you've been intimidated of taking your long rods in a rod tube. You know what? By getting these 4-piece outfits, they come in very small tubes, or even forget the tubes if you don't want it. You can literally put it right inside your suitcase. So it's a very smart way to travel, and you can still enjoy your fishing no matter where you're going in the world.
Fisher Girl! Gotta have pink!
Fisher girls, if you're fishing from shore, one of the best lures to use if you're fishing where there's weeds and rocks and you don't want to get caught on bottom, but you want to catch bigger fish, it's good to use a twitch bait that suspends and that you can fish just below the surface, especially one that's anywhere from 3 to 4 inches long. This particular one is 10 centimeters long. It's called an X-Wrap number 10, and it's made by Rapala, very famous lure company. So the reason this lure works well is it's neutral buoyancy. That means that when this lure hits the water and you retrieve it, it dives down to about 5 feet, and when you stop, it stays there. That means suspends. So it doesn't float to the surface and it doesn't sink to the bottom. When you twitch it, it makes it go from side to side. So you can literally let the lure sit there and give it a twitch of your rod tip, and it kicks from side to side. So the lure is neutral buoyancy. It has rattles inside that you can hear. They're pretty loud. You can cast it really far, and it'll run shallow, less than 5 feet, which is ideal for catching big fish like pike, muskie, smallmouth and largemouth bass, and walleye fishing right from shore.